Okay, picture this. It's Friday night. You've had a monster of a week, and you finally collapse onto the couch, remote in hand, scrolling through that endless sea of options. You fly past the bright, cheerful comedies, you skip the feel-good reality shows, and you bypass those inspiring documentaries. And then, you stop. Your thumb just hovers over a thumbnail. It's a documentary about a cold case, a chilling story of a town just haunted by a mystery, or maybe it's a horror film promising 2 straight hours of pure, uncut terror. There's a part of your brain that goes, come on, you should watch something light. But another part, a much stronger part, well, it presses play. Why? Why do we do that? Why are we so irresistibly drawn to the dark, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying?
Well, in this explainer, we are going to pull back that very curtain. First up, we'll get into the allure of the dark and this strange paradox of why we sometimes feel a little ashamed about liking it. Then we're going to get into the fascinating neuroscience, what is literally happening inside your brain during a good scare. From there, we'll go even deeper into the psychology of it all with the concept called the shadow self. And then, and this is the most important part, we'll look at how we can actually use this understanding not to get rid of our dark side, but to embrace it for a richer, more complete life.
So let's just start with that big, central question. What is this pull towards the grim and the gruesome? This brings us to what you could call the forbidden fruit paradox. It's this idea that we're often drawn to things precisely because we feel like we shouldn't be. You know that little voice that whispers, "This might be bad for you." Yeah, that's the one that just makes it all the more tempting. It's this fundamental clash between our deep-seated curiosity and everything we've been taught.
It is so easy to feel like there's something a little off about us, and we're fascinated by a morbid story, right? Are we secretly broken? Are we just morbid weirdos? The answer, and I can tell you this with 100% confidence, is a huge, resounding no. Your attraction to the dark isn't a bug, it's a feature. Think of it as this ancient, built-in part of your operating system. It's a deeply human, psychological mechanism that actually served a real purpose for our ancestors. I mean, being hyper-aware of threats was a pretty good survival advantage. This fascination, it connects us, it's a core part of being human.
So, and this is the really crucial point. The problem isn't your interest in dark stuff. The problem is the layer of shame that we just heap right on top of it. We're taught, pretty much from day one, that good people only like good things. Sunshine, happy endings, you know the deal. So when we find ourselves completely engrossed in a true crime podcast, or maybe even rooting for a morally gray anti-hero, this little alarm of self-judgment just starts blaring. That's the paradox right there. We're drawn to the forbidden fruit, but then we feel guilty for even taking a bite. And that guilt, it just leads us to push down and repress these totally natural interests.
And this speaks directly to a famous idea from the psychologist Carl Jung. What you resist persists. See, when we try to shove down a thought or an interest because we're ashamed of it, we don't get rid of it. Actually, we do the exact opposite. We give it power. We feed it in the dark. That fascination doesn't just poof disappear. It gets stronger, it goes underground, and it's far more likely to influence us from the shadows of our own minds. The more you tell yourself, I shouldn't be into this, the more your brain screams, oh yeah, why not?
Okay, so if this attraction is totally natural, how does it actually work in our brains? Let's dive into the science of it all. Why, on a chemical level, does the brain find this unique kind of pleasure in fear and mystery? The answers are, honestly, so cool, and they're all hidden deep within our own neurochemistry.
So get this, there's a concept called benign masochism, a term from psychologist Paul Rosen. Now it sounds intense, I know, but it describes a super common experience. Think about eating a ridiculously spicy chili pepper. Every signal from your tongue is just screaming, pain, fire, get it out. Your body's having a genuine threat response, but your conscious brain, it knows you're not actually in danger. It's this wild disconnect. The body's alarm system is blaring while the brain's logic center is just calmly observing. And that is what creates this thrilling, pleasurable rush. We see it everywhere. The terror of a roller coaster, the ache of a deep massage, even crying your eyes out during a sad movie.
This is the exact battle that wages in your head when you watch a horror movie. In one corner, you've got your amygdala, that ancient almond-shaped fear center. It sees the jump scare, and it does not hesitate. It smashes the panic button, flooding your system with adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart pounds, your muscles clench, your body is physically preparing for a real-life threat. But at the exact same time, your highly evolved prefrontal cortex, think of it as the rational CEO of your brain, is sending out a company-wide email that just says, everybody chill, those are just actors, that's corn syrup, not blood, we are perfectly safe on the couch.
And this experience, this rapid-fire toggling between raw, primal fear and the conscious relief of knowing you're totally safe, it's intoxicating. It's a full-body experience. You get that massive chemical rush of a life-or-death situation, and then immediately that blissful wave of relief washes over you. It lets us feel intensely, profoundly alive, to test our own limits and experience the full spectrum of what our bodies can do, all without a single drop of actual risk. It's pretty much the ultimate safe thrill ride for our entire nervous system. Okay, that explains horror, but what about mysteries, true crime, cold cases, thrillers? This is where something called information gap theory is so key. Now, a lot of us think of dopamine as the reward chemical, but that's not quite right. A better way to think of it is as the seeking chemical. It's the neurochemical of motivation, of anticipation. It's not released when we get the prize, but in the pursuit of it. Your brain is a puzzle-solving machine. It absolutely hates an open loop, a question without an answer. So when you're hit with a mystery, your brain starts pumping out dopamine, not just to make you feel good, but to create this urgent, almost obsessive need to seek, to investigate, and to close that information gap. So, it turns out our brains get a bigger kick from the chase than from the catch. Just think about it. Once the mystery is solved, the dopamine fades, the thrill is gone. You get addicted not to the solution, but to that delicious tension of not knowing, and that dopamine-fueled pursuit of the truth. From a neurological standpoint, certainty is calm, it's stable, but man, it is also boring. Mystery though, mystery is pure rocket fuel for the brain.
All right, now that we've covered the brain chemistry, let's go another layer deeper. Let's move from the hardware of the brain to the software of the mind. We're going to explore the psychological side of this, using a really powerful concept from Carl Jung, the shadow self. And I want you to think of your conscious personality as the main floor of a house. You know, the clean part where you entertain guests. The shadow? Well, that's the basement.
So in this psychological basement, we store everything that we, our parents, or society has decided is messy, unacceptable, or just bad. It's where we shove our rage, our envy, our forbidden desires, our selfishness, our capacity for cruelty. It's not that these things are inherently evil. They're just parts of the full human experience that don't really fit with the polite, curated version of ourselves we like to show the world. So we lock them downstairs, out of sight, and try to pretend they're not there.
But of course, they are there. And this is exactly why we are so captivated by complex villains and dark anti-heroes. Think about characters like the Joker or Walter White from Breaking Bad. They don't just visit their basements, they practically live there. They act out all the impulses we keep locked up. They say the things we would never, ever dare to. Watching them gives us what psychologists call a vicarious release. It's a safe, contained way for our own shadow to come up and get some air. We get to explore our own capacity for chaos or rebellion without ever actually having to hurt anyone or break a single law. It's like a psychological flight simulator.
Let's break down how this stuff connects in the real world. Take the huge obsession with true crime. When you're lost in the gruesome details, you're not just being morbid, you're probably engaging in vicarious survival. By learning how a victim was targeted, your subconscious is running a survival simulation, asking, what would I do? How could I avoid that? Or what about the classic attraction to the emotionally unavailable bad boy or bad girl? That intense, can't eat, can't sleep feeling? That's the dopamine gap, right there. Their unpredictability creates this massive mystery your brain gets desperate to solve, making you addicted to the chase. And finally, that horror movie marathon with your friends? That's not just about getting scared. It's about social bonding. Going through a shared threat and surviving it together releases oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, making you feel intensely connected as a group.
Okay, so we get it now. Our attraction to the dark is this complex mix of neuroscience and deep psychology. It's not a flaw, it's a feature. So, what do we do with that information? The goal isn't to stop watching dark shows or to pretend these interests aren't there. The goal is to engage with them consciously. So, let's get to our final section, how to actually use this darkness for your own personal growth.
All right, here are 5 practical steps you can take to start integrating your dark side, to turn this fascination from just a passive habit into an active tool for self-awareness. First, practice shadow work. Second, use fiction as a conscious simulator. Third, decode your romantic patterns. Fourth, seek out healthy forms of intensity through awe. And fifth, the big one, integrate, don't amputate. Let's break a couple of these down.
Let's look at step 1, shadow work. All this really means is making the unconscious conscious. Try this journal prompt and be brutally, privately honest. Now, writing it down does not mean you're going to do it. Actually, the opposite is true. By dragging a dark thought out of that basement and into the light of your awareness, you strip it of its power. You can look at it objectively and see what it's really about. You might realize, oh, I'm not some evil person, I just have some really deep repressed anger about a situation and I need to find a healthy outlet for it. The simple act of just acknowledging it, it's transformative. Now let's talk about step 3, because this is a big one for a lot of people. If you find yourself in chaotic relationships over and over again, attracted to partners who feel like an unsolvable puzzle, you might just be addicted to that adrenaline and dopamine high. Your brain has learned to equate that chaotic, anxious feeling of the chase with love. The challenge is to retrain it. The next time you meet someone who seems kind of boring but is actually just stable, kind, and consistent, challenge yourself to stick around. See if you can learn to appreciate the neurochemistry of safety, that quiet, steady hum of serotonin. It may not feel like a thriller movie, but that's kind of the point. Real love is often quiet.
And this all leads to the final, most important point, integration. The goal of a healthy life isn't to become some perfect being of light who only feels happy emotions. That's not just impossible, it's not even human. The goal is to become a complete person. Think of your emotional range like a grand piano. To only play the high, happy white keys is to miss out on half the music. The dark, minor keys, they provide depth, richness, and contrast. The goal is to have access to the entire keyboard, to know the dark notes are there, to understand what they mean, and to know that they are an essential part of your beautiful, complex human song.
Ultimately, what this all comes down to is a really profound shift in how we see ourselves. Our love for the dark isn't a sickness, it's a search for wholeness. We are drawn to mystery because we instinctively know that life itself is a profound mystery. We are drawn to the macabre because, on some deep level, we know that death is what gives life its meaning. And we are drawn to the shadow in fiction because we know that we aren't made of only light. By exploring these darker corners safely and consciously, we don't become darker people. We become deeper, more resilient, and a lot more compassionate and honest about what it really means to be fully human.
So I'll just leave you with this. The next time you find yourself pressing play on that dark documentary or getting totally lost in a chilling novel, are you going to judge yourself, or are you going to get curious? Will you ask, what part of my own shadow is this speaking to? What is this teaching me about being human? Will you embrace the fascinating complexity of your own beautiful, strange, and wonderfully whole mind?